Halifax Fire and Emergency and fought a long battle against gender discrimination within her workplace. I cannot tell you how inspirational this woman is. Her battle lasted 12 years, but she didn't give up. And that's right, she deserves that. And not only is she coming forward to share her story, but she's bringing it to empower others, and she's going to bring about a change. And I'm going to let her share that with you. Big round of applause for Liane Tessler, please.
Hello. Hello. My name is Liane Tessler. I was once a firefighter, but I was targeted and forced out of a job that I loved and I was good at because I spoke out against the discrimination I faced as a woman. I was harassed, bullied, humiliated, threatened, and denied a permanent job because of my gender. They tampered with my personal belongings, spread malicious lies about me, and when I spoke out about it, they called me crazy. Fire department officers told me that my claims of harassment were more perceived than real. In other words, according to them, I was making things up. I learned firsthand the obvious gendered double standard. When men speak out, they are seen as heroes, game changers. People call them assertive, powerful, and strong. When women speak out, we are seen as bitches and troublemakers. People call us hysterical, violent, mentally unstable, or too sensitive. The complaints I filed formally against the Halifax Fire Department were dismissed as irrelevant. What's worse, I was blamed for the misogyny I faced at work and for showing signs of the depression that came from it. Even my female colleagues stayed away from me, afraid to share their own experiences or even to talk to me about mine. I was isolated and intentionally ignored by officers and upper brass. When I went to the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission in 2007, they also ignored me. I spent thousands of dollars to have mountains of well-written documentation reviewed by lawyers. But the commission left my case on a shelf to gather dust for 5 years. When the human rights officers finally did attempt to investigate, their work was cursory, sloppy, and biased. This adds to the hopelessness of an already hopeless situation when one realizes that even agencies like the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission are not doing their job or do not seem to know how to do their job. And other advocacy groups that I approached, like women's groups, were hesitant to support women like me who were suffering from gender discrimination within the male-dominated workplace. For years, I sought help from academics here in Nova Scotia and within Canada, celebrities, many different media outlets within Canada and abroad, even lawyers in the USA. In my experience, many lawyers here in Nova Scotia were reluctant to take on gender-related cases. To be honest, the lack of support from individual women and women's groups was one of the most devastating discoveries throughout this long journey. Over the years, I sought the aid of many individual women and established grassroots women's organizations here in Nova Scotia and within Canada and got little to no response. When connections were established, they were temporary. No one stayed the course with me, and when times got urgent, not one group responded. What I realized in this long fight for safety and gender justice is that women are afraid. We are afraid of each other, we're afraid of our unions, we're afraid of our employers, and even women groups are afraid. Abusive people know that women are going to be intimidated and continue to hope that we will be complacent and silent, too afraid to speak up. The employers and men in question count on it. But it's no wonder the paranoia, anger, and even hatred that was evident in my situation shows the disdain with which women are treated in many workplaces. where we are not encouraged to speak up about harassment and fear further abuse by coworkers, unions, and employers. All too often, women adopt ways of coping within the workplace, dodging the men we fear, ignoring the bad behavior, or minimizing the pain of being abused. Most often we blame ourselves or attack other women. We are told, like I was constantly, that speaking out will be bad for us, or we will cause more trouble than good. This sentiment is shared by many, including caring friends and family and many different kinds of professionals who think that they are doing us a favor by warning us not to rock the boat or reminding us that we could lose our jobs. These same people go as far as to telling us to keep a low profile, to put up with harassment, or just get on with our lives. In other words, we are taught the situation is impossible to change. Yes, women more than ever are speaking out, but let's get real. It's still very hard, and for many it is not an option. Responsibilities at home involving children and other family members often make it impossible for women to bear the brunt of retaliation. But for those women who are in a position to speak, need to try and find the courage to do so. Because I spoke out against the gender discrimination in the fire service and fought against the Human Rights Commission itself, I was able to win my case and finally, after 12 years, have the HRM admit, acknowledge, and make amends for the decades of abuse and discrimination they put me and other women through. Most people would have not bothered to put the time and effort in, and I don't blame them. It took 12 years, thousands of dollars, and much emotional, psychological pain to get to this point. But for me, coming forward, speaking out has been one of the sanest things I've ever done in my life. Remaining silent is guaranteed only to change nothing at all. Advocating for your rights as a woman, wanting a safer workplace, and speaking out against harassment should not be cause for punishment, and yet in many cases it still is. Back in 2005, when I first started speaking out, I was terrified, and I knew instinctively that I would not get believed or taken seriously. But despite the backlash that you will receive in the workplace, I will continue to speak out and encourage others to speak out as well if you can. I don't want other people to experience what I have, so I formed a group called Equity Watch. We will support you whether you are ready to speak out or not. We will help you find your voice. Our objectives are to, number one, support women and other marginalized people who have encountered equity issues at work. Number two, hold a support group to hear stories and provide practical solutions. And number three, unite with others to campaign for equal rights at work. Organizations and employers don't change on their own. They need to be monitored and watched. Equity Watch is a group that will fight back. The HRM can dismiss and ignore me, a single voice, for 12 years, but they cannot ignore thousands of women and allied men standing up shoulder to shoulder. So please join me on Thursday the 25th at 6 p.m. in the Public Central Library, the Lindsay Children's Room, room 301. And please see my blog at lianetessler.wordpress.com. Thank you for listening.